All right, hello, and welcome to our Google Hangout, our workshop on our Nancy Fetzer notes. So as you can see, I have two screens up, okay? This is what we're gonna be doing. First of all, the screen you're seeing right now is our Nancy Fetzer notes for our first lesson. So as you can see, I have this right here where you can see this is our document we're going to be using. I can scroll through that so we can see that together. Okay, now when I click over here, you'll see I have a blank piece of paper. We're going to be using this as sort of our notes. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that for a second. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through our first section of social studies. Now, it's important for us to make sure we're understanding what's going on here because we're going to be doing a multiple intelligence project with one of these standards. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, you probably should have read the chat or the lesson so far, which is on page 52 in your book. It's lesson 1. It's the desert Southwest. So once you've done that, we now have these notes to do. So I'm going to go over here, put in my name. We don't have a number, so you don't need to worry about that. And then the date, whatever date you're doing this on. We're going to be doing this over the course of a week, so I'm just going to go ahead and put 9/21 since it was the week of 9/21, even though it's not the 21st today. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put in the subject, which is social studies. The unit, chapter, and lesson. Now this is chapter 1, lesson 1. I think. I may be wrong about that. Nope, this is chapter 2. Okay. Chapter 2, lesson 1. There we go. And then the lesson title. The lesson title you can see on page 52, and the lesson title is The Desert Southwest. Then in this box here, we need to put in the standard. Now the standard you can find, I'm going to go ahead and show you the book right here. Switch over to this one for you. You can see, so here we go. Here's the book that you're looking at here. If you're looking for the standard, it's not on this page. It's not written out for you, but down on the bottom, let's see if you can see it there. Down on the bottom, it gives you what standards it's covering. So you're not going to be able to see exactly what the standard says if you go to that page, but you will, you will be able to see what they are. So for right now, I'm just going to put in what it says down there and go back and add the standards later. So for right now, let's go back to this. I'm going to go ahead and put in 5.1.1, 5.1.2, and 5.1.3. So this is 5th grade standards, domain 1, standard 1, 2, and 3. So when we're talking about our multiple intelligence project coming up here in, I think Thursday is when I'm going to be, when that has been assigned, you'll see 1, 2, and 3. These are all under the same domain. So any of these standards that we are talking about today, you can go ahead and use for that. So now let's go ahead and get started with how we do our notes. So we have our standards. We'll go back and add the actual wording of those standards later. But now this is how we're going to be doing our Nancy Fetzer notes. It is going to be very spatial. Nancy Fetzer, that style of writing and note-taking is very spatial. So some of us may love this, some of us may not like it so much, but we're going to work on it because it's one way of taking notes. Now, as you can see, down here, you can see that we have the actual text written in. So you're going to go ahead and read through this, but we're going to do it spatially. I'm going to show you how we do it. This piece of paper over here that right now is blank is going to be covered with pictures at a certain point. And we're going to try to work out a summary. So if you look down a little further, you see that there's two different things right here. Nancy Fetzer visual notes image, and then a section summary. So what we're trying to do is we're going to take this big piece of text right here. We're going to make it 5 to 7 sentences of a summary. So let's go ahead and get started. So here it says, the Pueblo people, the desert Southwest with mesas deep canyons, steep cliffs, and rugged mountains was a challenging place to live. Okay, so that's kind of an important thing to talk about. So I'm going to go over here right now and start off. Now, when you're drawing these pictures, you're using some pictures and some phrases, but you are not being a fancy artist right now. This should not take you a long time. You want to just jot some ideas down. So, first of all, that first sentence again says the desert Southwest with its mesas, deep canyons, steep cliffs, and rugged mountains was a challenging place to live. Okay, well, desert Southwest. Okay, so I'm just going to write that down because that's what we're talking about. And then it says several different types of landforms, right? Mesas. It has mesas, which sort of look like that. It has deep canyons, which are sort of the opposite, right? Steep canyons. Sharp or steep cliffs, it says. So there's like a cliff right there. And rugged mountains. Right, so there we go. So those are some of those types that they were talking about. Let's go back here for a second. So I'm just jotting down some images to help me out. And it was a challenging place to live. Underneath this, let's just go ahead. I'm just going to go ahead and write challenge. All right, so these places. So the desert Southwest with its many landforms was a challenging place to live. Okay, seems like a pretty good understanding of it so far. Then it says intense summer heat was usually followed by bitter winter cold. So it's hot and cold here. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw the sun. The sun's going to be shining and it's going to be very, very hot. And then I'm going to go over here and draw a person, and the person's going to be crossing his arms, and there's going to be some wind going by, and up here we'll even put a little thermometer, and the thermometer only is going up to about there because it's very cold. So now this is sort of a visual overview of that first mini paragraph. You can see right there we have a little mini paragraph. So now I have it right here, and I can go back and recite it. Each time I write down a line of these pictures, I'm going to go back and recite it because it'll help me remember what I wrote down. So the desert Southwest with its many different landforms was a challenging place to live. It was both very, very hot and very, very cold. Okay, so there we go. I've read that first part. I can go ahead and read it again. The desert Southwest with its many landforms was a challenging place to live. It was both very, very hot and very, very cold. Okay, I got it. Let's move on to the next section. And the next section says, among the American Indians who were able to adapt or adjust. Now, here we go. That's something I'm going to want to know. That's a term. So I'm going to go over here and put adapt. And then in parentheses, I'm just going to say what it does. It adjusted. Always want to get my terms down. Okay, so I have that on my paper, and you can see that sort of mini right there. Among the American Indians who were able to adapt or adjust their life ways to the natural environment and its resources were the Hopi and the Zuni. So the Hopi and the Zuni. So now over here, now I don't really have a picture I can write for the Hopi and the Zuni. I'm just going to go ahead and write Hopi and the Zuni. The Hopi and the Zuni. Okay, back to my text. The Hopi lived in what is today the state of Arizona. The Zuni lived further east in present-day New Mexico. In time, okay, well, let's talk about this. This is kind of important to know where they lived, Arizona and New Mexico. So I'm just going to do it real quick. And remember, you do not want to be an artist. This is sort of that part of the United States. Let's say this is California right there, meaning Arizona would be about here, and New Mexico would be there. So the Hopi lived in Arizona. The Zuni lived in New Mexico. Quick and easy, just like that, okay? Then we are going to go ahead and move back into the text, and let's see what it says. In time, they and most of their groups in the region became known as the Pueblo people. Like their ancient Puebloan ancestors, they lived in pueblos built onto mesas or on the sides of steep canyons. So they are known as the what? They are known as the Pueblo people. Pueblo people. And where did they build their houses? Well, it said that mesa again. So I'm going to go ahead and put a few houses on top of a mesa, and also a house sort of hanging off the side of a cliff. There we go. So now if I go back, I want to go back all the way and read through all the way again. So the desert Southwest with its many landforms was a challenging place to live. It was both very, very hot and very, very cold. Of those who adapted or adjusted to this environment were the Hopi and the Zuni, who lived in Arizona, or present-day Arizona and present-day New Mexico. They were known as the Pueblo people and built their houses on mesas or on the sides of cliffs. So once again, I've now taken those two paragraphs, these two paragraphs right here, and sort of slimmed it down a little bit. So I'm going to read through it one more time. The desert Southwest with its many landforms was a challenging place to live. It was both very, very hot and very, very cold. Of those who adapted or adjusted, adapted or adjusted to the area were the Hopi and the Zuni. The Hopi lived in present-day Arizona and the Zuni lived in present-day New Mexico. They were known as the Pueblo people and built their houses on top of mesas or on the sides of cliffs. Boom, there we go. Now I've recited it twice. I feel like I understand what I'm talking about. We can move to the next part. The next part says, the climate of the desert Southwest provided little rainfall, so few trees grew. Okay, that's good to know. So again, we're talking about the desert Southwest, and I'm going to say rain no, there was very little rain. What else was there little of? There were also very little trees. Okay, now I have an image of rain with an X through it and a tree with an X through it. Let's keep going on this. The climate of the desert Southwest provided little rainfall, so few trees grew. The Hopi and the Zuni used stones and mud to build their pueblos. Other groups built houses from adobe, sun-dried bricks made of clay mixed with straw. Okay, that's a big portion right there, and I want to write a lot of that stuff down. So let's go over here. The first thing we're talking about how they built their houses. And I don't really mind too much about what the different people, right here it says, the Hopi and the Zuni used this, other groups built this. I just want to know what these people generally used. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a person, and the person's going to be building a house. There we go. And that's what that's a house. That's a house. All right. And this house is made out of what? Some of it was made out of stones, mud, and what else? There was something else. Adobe. And adobe is sun-dried bricks of clay mixed with straw. Now that is a language of the discipline, so we're going to want to make sure that we have that. All right, so let's go back and see how I did here. The climate of the desert Southwest provided little rainfall, so few trees grew. The Hopi and the Zuni used stones and mud to build their pueblos. Other groups built houses from adobe, sun-dried bricks of clay mixed with straw. Some wood was used to build the roofs of the pueblos. The Pueblo people had to travel long distances into the mountains to find pine and juniper trees from which they could make the beams for their roofs. Now, I could put something in about trees, but remember, I want this to be a summary, and I've already talked about how the trees were not very, they weren't there, right? They didn't grow much. So obviously they'd have to travel a long time if they wanted to get trees. Also, I already have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 sentences, and I still have a whole paragraph to go. So I need to consider what is more important, talking about what they made their buildings out of, or that they had to go travel long distances to find wood. I've already know that there's not much wood around because the trees don't grow there. So I'm going to not worry about that note. Remember, we are getting a summary. We don't need to put every single thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at our last paragraph now. Even in their dry environment, the Pueblo Indians were able to grow their staple or main foods of maize, which is corn, beans, and squash. Okay, so I want to know that. I want to know what they grew because that's very important, right? So what did they grow? Okay, again, quick little pictures, but let's say this is going to be corn. That's kind of looks like corn and the leaves there. All right, so there's corn. Oh, there we go. So I've drawn some corn. What else did they have there? They had corn. They also grew beans. It sort of looks like a bean. And squash. Now, I don't know how to draw squash, so this is where you can get a little inventive. Something to help you remember. For me, it's going to be a person who's jumping down onto and squashing something. There. So for me, that'll help me remind myself that that is squash. Also, I need to make sure the term is there. So this is staple or main food. And you know what? I'm going to add something in. Now, I'm not just saying that they're growing this. The reason they're growing this is because it's dry, but they still could grow this. So how do I draw dry? Well, I'm just going to draw a towel because towel's dry. There we go. All right. So you can draw pictures. It doesn't have to be accurate. It just needs to be pictures that help you remember how this stuff works. All right, let's go back and check out the last few sentences. They planted these crops at the bottoms of mesas. Okay, where they're planting things. Good. Bottoms of mesas where they could catch rainwater. They found underground springs and built irrigation canals to water their crops. So they built them on the bottom of mesas. So these things here were grown on the bottoms of mesas because they could catch the rain. They used underground springs, so I'm just drawing a spring. And then, you know what? They just used other things, canals, things like that, so etc. for irrigation. All right, let's see if there's anything else important because I'm running out of space here, and I think I have a lot of sentences already. Irrigation is the use of canals, ditches, and pipes to move water to dry areas. The Pueblo also grew cotton, which was used to weave blankets and clothing. Well, one sentence here at the end. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So let me go back, and I want to recite through my entire paper now, okay? Let's go back up to the top. Since we've been reciting them throughout, it should be somewhat easy for us to go back through and say, in the desert Southwest, the many landforms presented a challenging environment. It was both very, very hot and very, very cold. Of those who adapted or adjusted to the area were the Hopi and the Zuni. The Hopi lived in present-day Arizona, while the Zuni lived in present-day New Mexico. They were known as the Pueblo people and built their houses on tops of mesas and on the sides of cliffs. In the desert Southwest, there's very little rainfall, which means very few trees. People had to build their houses from stones, mud, and adobe, which is sun-dried bricks of clay mixed with straw. Even though it was dry, they could still grow their staple or main foods, corn, beans, and squash. They would grow these at the bottom of mesas to catch the rain, as well as use underground springs and other things for irrigation. Okay, so I'm going to go through and read it one more time, and I'm going to count my sentences and see if I have 5 to 7, which is what I need for a good summary. So I'm going to go back up to the top. Number 1. In the desert Southwest, there are many different landforms that make it challenging to live there. That's 1. 2, it is both very, very hot and very, very cold. That's a small sentence. Maybe I can join that in with the other one, but we'll see. Number 3, of those who adapted or adjusted to the area were the Hopi and the Zuni. Now we're on to 4. The Hopi lived in present-day Arizona, while the Zuni lived in present-day New Mexico. Okay, we're moving on to 5. The Pueblo, they were known as the Pueblo people and lived on the tops of mesas or on the sides of cliffs. In the desert Southwest, there's very little rain, which means very few trees. So people had to build their houses from stones, mud, and adobe, which is sun-dried bricks of clay mixed with straw. That's number 6. So now I'm on to number 7. This might need to be my last one. Let's see. And if not, I can go up and I can make these two one sentence. So here we go. Number 7, let's see. Even though it was dry, they were still able to grow their staple or main foods of corn, beans, and squash, which they grew on the bottom of mesas to catch the rain and use underground springs and other things for irrigation. Now that's kind of a long sentence, so maybe I want to split this one into 2 and make this one 1. But I don't have to worry about that yet. So now we're going to go ahead. So now that we have this written, we're going to go back. I have my summary. I haven't written it yet, so let's see what we do next. Now we're here, and you can see these two things. The first one says Nancy Fetzer Visual Notes Image. So click into that box, and then it says, I gave you the instructions right here. Insert, image, take a snapshot, allow, take snapshot, select. So up here to insert, image, this will open that box, take a snapshot. You'll need to allow, you can remember, and you can allow up here as well. And there we go, hello. Now you can sort of see me. And all my junk still laying in the back over here. All right, so once you have it, you hold this up. Make sure you center it as much as you can. I want to see as much as I can. And I've taken my snapshot. Then I'm going to go ahead and press select. And if you look at that, there we go. Now, if we look here, look at that. My beautiful pictures are now a part of my amazing notes. So now I scroll down just a bit, and now it says section summary, 5 to 7 sentences. So here we go. Now I just go through and I write exactly what we were doing before. So the desert Southwest and its many landforms make it a challenging place to live with. Now I'm taking those first 2 sentences and making them one. Challenging place to live with both extreme heat and cold. There we go. That's 1. Okay, let's go ahead and make our second one, which is where we're talking about the adapted. And this is all bold. I should not make this bold. There we go. Now it says, of those who adapted or adjusted to the environment were the Hopi and the Zuni. Now, since adapted is a term, I should either put this in bold or go up here and highlight it in yellow, whatever I want. But I want to know that that is one of the terms of this unit. Okay, so now that I've written about that, the Hopi lived in present-day Arizona, and the Zuni lived in present-day New Mexico. Okay. They were known as the Pueblo people and built their houses on the tops of mesas and on the sides of cliffs. Then we say in the desert Southwest, there was very little rain, which meant very few trees. People had to build their homes out of stones, mud, and adobe, or sun-dried bricks of clay mixed with straw. And then that's another one of my terms. So I'm going to go over to Adobe, select it, and do whatever you want to do to make it. I'm going to go ahead and highlight in yellow again. Okay, now we're getting close to our end here. So let's go ahead and, something may have happened to our video here. Well, if you can still, there we go. Perfect. All right. Clay mixed with straw. So since I think it's moving a little slow here, I'm going to avoid, I won't put in the rest of it, but there's only really one more sentence where I'm going to talk about how the dry climate, even though there is a dry climate, you still have your staples, and you can go ahead and put that there. Now that's one day's work right there, is for you to have each of these things done. You read it, you put in your picture, you write your summary, and then you move on to your next one. You do the same thing. You put your picture, your summary, the next one, picture, summary, the next one, picture, summary. Now at the end, there's a place for summary. Now, based on your 4 summaries, you can create your own summary. Remember, a summary is 5 to 7 sentences, so you need to break it down even more. And what is the entire lesson about? And that's happening at the end once you've done all of this. Okay? So that's the way we do our Nancy Fetzer notes. They're very spatial. If you have any questions, please let me know. But I hope you have a great day. And as always,